There is one truth we all deny, more certain than love, more certain than money, more certain than the belief that tomorrow will look like today. That truth is death. We know it waits for us. We know it waits for everyone we love. And yet, somehow, we manage to walk through our days pretending it is a rumor or a problem for some distant future version of ourselves. We avoid its presence the way a child avoids the dark, by filling our lives with noise and distractions and shallow comforts. But no matter how fast we scroll, no matter how carefully we curate the illusion of control, death remains. It is the only guarantee any of us will ever hold. A silent promise that this body, this mind, this story will one day end. And perhaps that's why we don't talk about it. It terrifies us, not just because it means the loss of everything familiar, but because it exposes the fragility of everything we cling to. It reminds us that all our striving, our ambitions, our worries, our endless plans, are ultimately temporary, that we are temporary. In modern life, we have become experts at hiding death away. We keep it sterile, discreet, contained behind hospital curtains and funeral homes. We use euphemisms to soften its impact. Passing away, resting in peace, gone to a better place. We pretend that if we don't name it, it won't find us. But even our denial is a kind of acknowledgement, an admission that this truth has more power over us than any other. It waits patiently for us to look it in the eye, and when we finally do, something in us shifts. We see that our denial has a cost, a subtle erosion of our humanity, a quiet disconnection from the raw, sacred reality of being alive. When we push death out of sight, we also push away a part of ourselves. Because death isn't just an end, it's a mirror that shows us what we truly value, a mirror that strips away the noise and leaves only what matters. But in this world, we are taught to turn away from that mirror, to keep moving, to stay productive, to never pause long enough to feel the weight of what we're running from. We build lives on foundations of denial not because we're weak, but because we're afraid. Afraid that if we stare too long into the truth, we'll fall apart. Afraid that acknowledging death will make life unbearable. But the opposite is often true. It is precisely when we allow death into our awareness that life begins to take on real meaning. Not in a poetic or abstract sense, but in a deeply practical one. Suddenly, time becomes precious. Conversations matter more. The small moments, a look, a breath, a sunrise, begin to feel sacred. Ancient cultures understood this. They did not hide death behind closed doors. They sat with the dying. They mourned openly. They walked through rituals that acknowledged the pain and mystery of loss. Together, death was not an enemy to be defeated, but a passage to be respected. And in that respect, there was connection to each other, to spirit, to the cycles of nature. They did not pretend to control death. They made peace with its presence. And in doing so, they lived with a kind of clarity we often lack today. Because when you live with death in view, you don't waste time on things that don't matter. You stop chasing what's hollow. You stop pretending you're invincible. You begin to live like your life actually belongs to you. Today, we grieve in silence, in private, behind dim screens and polite condolences. We keep sorrow quiet because the world keeps moving, and it expects us to move with it. Mourning is seen as a personal issue, not a collective experience. A disruption, an inconvenience, something to get over rather than go through. But death doesn't work that way. It doesn't obey our schedules or respect our productivity. It tears through the illusion of control and leaves us raw. And when we're told to hide that rawness, to return to work, to smile, to be okay, we begin to fracture inside. We become strangers to our own emotions. We suppress our fear of loss until it becomes anxiety. We numb our grief until it turns into exhaustion. And all the while, we keep pretending we're fine, that this is normal, that this is life. But it's not life, it's survival. And deep down, we know it. There's a quiet part of us that aches for something more honest, something ancient, a way of being that allows us to feel what we feel without shame, to name death when it arrives, to walk through its presence, not around it. Because without space to grieve, we lose our capacity to love fully. We harden. We grow afraid of connection, because every connection becomes a risk. And when we can't face death, we can't truly face life either. We keep everything at a distance, including ourselves. But what if we made space again? What if we relearned how to mourn, not just privately but together? Not with rushed services and sanitized rituals, but with presence? What if we allowed sorrow to shape us instead of trying to suppress it? There is strength in grief. Not the kind of strength that gets applause, but the quiet, enduring kind. The strength to be real, to be human, to let loss open something in us instead of shutting us down. Because when we grieve openly, we remember what it means to care. And that remembrance brings us closer, not just to each other, but to life itself. You see, when we avoid death, we aren't just avoiding an end, we're avoiding a teacher. Because death, more than any philosophy or self-help book, shows us what is real. It teaches in silence, in absence, in the sudden stillness after a heartbeat stops. It reminds us that everything we hold can be lost. And strangely, that reminder is not meant to scare us. It's meant to wake us up. The truth is, we've built a culture on forgetting. Forgetting that we are impermanent. Forgetting that everyone we meet is temporary. Forgetting that this moment right now will never return. And in that forgetting, we grow numb. We keep ourselves busy, endlessly so. We chase goals, distractions, routines, relationships, not because we're full of life, but because we're running from the truth of death. From the silence it brings. From the mirror it holds up. But when someone we love dies, that mirror shatters everything. And for a brief, unbearable moment, we see clearly. We remember what matters. We remember that no achievement, no possession, no amount of control can shield us from loss. And in that raw remembering, there's a kind of strange, devastating clarity. It's as if death rips the veil off the world. And we look around and wonder how we ever forgot. How we ever let the trivial become so important. How we ever lived so far away from what we truly felt. That's the strange gift death offers, if we let it. Not peace, not comfort, but truth. A return to the real. And from that truth, we begin to live differently. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, but with more care, with more depth, with fewer illusions and more attention. Because once you've touched death, once you've stood in the presence of what cannot be undone, you begin to hear life differently. You start listening to the moments in between the noise, the way a loved one laughs, the way the light moves through a room, the way your own breath feels when you're finally still. Most people don't realize how much of their life is lived in avoidance, not just of death, but of anything that reminds them they aren't in control. We bury our heads in routines, in entertainment, in plans stacked one after another like bricks. But beneath all that structure is fear, a quiet, persistent fear that everything could fall apart. Because deep down, we know it can. It will. We just don't want to feel it. We don't want to look at our loved ones and admit they are mortal. We don't want to look in the mirror and admit that one day we won't be here either. So we pretend. We treat youth like it's permanent. We treat health like it's earned. We treat time like it's infinite. But every tick of the clock is a quiet reminder. It's not. You are not guaranteed another decade. You are not guaranteed another year. You are not even guaranteed to finish this day. And yet, that isn't meant to be a threat. It's a kind of sacred invitation. To live like you remember the truth. To love like you know it won't last forever. To forgive before it's too late. To speak honestly while your voice still works. To slow down and feel this moment before it slips into the next. Death, if you let it, brings urgency without panic. It wakes you up, not to anxiety, but to meaning, to beauty, to presence. You begin to see that so much of what you worried about never really mattered. The grudges, the judgment, the ego, they all melt under the weight of this truth. You are here now and nothing is promised. And instead of that terrifying you, it can soften you, not into weakness, but into something wiser, more awake, more human, more willing to live this short, strange, miraculous life with your whole being. There's something humbling about remembering you're going to die, not in a dramatic, self-destructive way, but in a quiet, grounded way. It levels everything. It brings a kind of equality the world rarely offers. Because death doesn't care about your status, your titles, or your followers. It doesn't care how busy your calendar is, how disciplined your routines are, or how much you've achieved. It meets everyone the same way, with silence. And in that silence, all the roles we play fall away. What's left isn't your resume. It's how you made people feel. It's who you showed up as when no one was watching. It's the love you gave without needing to be thanked. The presence you offered without needing to be seen. That's what lingers in the room after someone's gone. Not their job title, not their bank account, but their essence. How they made others feel, and how deeply they were willing to feel themselves. And yet, we live in a time where feelings are often seen as liabilities, where grief is hidden, where vulnerability is framed as weakness. We are praised for our productivity and punished for our pauses. So it's no wonder we struggle to face death. It asks us to stop. Stop pretending we're invincible. Stop believing that more is always better. Stop running long enough to feel the weight of being alive. Ancient traditions didn't just acknowledge death, they made space for it. They told stories about it. They lit fires. They sang songs. They invited community to gather, not just to mourn, but to reflect. Death was a teacher, not just a taker. And in honoring death, they honored life more fully. They saw that the two were not enemies, but companions, always walking side by side. Life isn't in spite of death. It is precious because of it. We've forgotten that. And maybe now, in this strange, uncertain world, it's time we remember. There is a strange kind of freedom that comes when you stop pretending you're going to live forever. You begin to choose differently, not out of fear, but out of clarity. Out of the deep knowing that every yes costs time, and time is not a renewable resource. You stop saying yes to things that drain you. You stop waiting for the right moment to begin. You stop measuring your worth by how busy or impressive you seem. Because death doesn't care about appearances, cares about truth. And when you let death remind you of what's real, you return to yourself. Not the version of you that's always hustling to be better, but the version that's already enough simply because they're alive, breathing, aware, capable of wonder. You begin to find joy in the quiet places. Not the dramatic, performative kind of joy, but the steady, honest kind. The joy of presence. The joy of a morning without rush. The joy of sitting across from someone you love, knowing that nothing lasts, and letting that make the moment richer. Modern life doesn't encourage that kind of awareness. It wants you to believe that immortality lies just beyond the next achievement. That if you work hard enough, look young enough, stay productive enough, maybe you can outpace the end. But that's not living. That's bargaining with a truth that won't change. And the cost of that bargain is heavy. We lose time. We lose connection. We lose the chance to be fully here, in the only life we know we have. But when you make peace with the end, you're no longer in a rush to escape it. You're able to slow down without guilt, to savor without needing to justify, to choose not what is impressive, but what is meaningful. And in that space, something sacred opens. Not in theory, but in the body, in the breath, in the heart finally allowed to beat at its natural pace. When you begin to walk with death beside you, not behind you, not far ahead, but right here, something shifts in how you see the world. You stop needing everything to be permanent. You stop clinging so tightly to certainty, because you understand now, everything is passing. And that's not tragic. It's what makes everything matter. We try so hard to immortalize ourselves, through careers, through legacy, through photos and posts and carefully crafted identities. But the people we remember most, they're not the ones who left behind the most accomplishments. They're the ones who were present, the ones who listened when we were breaking, the ones who cried with us, laughed with us, sat with us in silence when no words could fix anything. In the end, presence is what remains. And death, if we let it, teaches us how to be present. Not in some grand spiritual gesture, but in the ordinary, fleeting, miraculous moments of daily life. The feel of your feet on the ground. The sound of someone breathing beside you in the dark. The way the sky turns gold for just a few minutes every evening. and then it's gone. These are the things we overlook when we pretend we have forever. But when we remember that we don't, we start to see the sacred in the simple. We stop waiting for life to start. We realize it's already happening, and we begin to ask better questions. Not how can I win, but what really matters. Not how do I appear, but who am I really? Not what will I leave behind, but how deeply did I live while I was here? These questions don't always come with answers, but they come with direction. They orient us toward what's real, and that, more than anything else, is what death offers. A quiet call to return to reality, to what's true, to what's now, to what's already in our hands. Sometimes, when we speak about death, people think it's morbid, that we're being dark, or depressing, or too serious. But what if it's the opposite? What if denying death is what makes life shallow? What if ignoring it is what makes our conversations dull, our days forgettable, our hearts closed? Because when we pretend death isn't real, we live like we're asleep. We delay the apologies. We withhold the love. We put off the dreams and conversations and risks that might have made us feel alive. All because we think we have time. But we don't know that. And that's not a threat. It's a reminder to stop waiting for some perfect version of life to begin, to stop postponing your soul in favor of your schedule, to stop assuming the people you love will always be just a phone call away, because one day they won't be. One day you'll wish you had said more, held longer, paused more often, paid attention, not just past time. And it won't be the big moments you miss the most. It'll be the quiet ones, the late night laughs, the way they looked at you when they thought you weren't watching, the ordinary days you rushed through because you were busy chasing something you can't even remember now. This isn't about guilt. It's about returning to the parts of life that were always trying to reach you, even when you were too distracted to notice, to the moments that didn't seem important until they were gone. Death gives us that lens. It strips away the illusion of endless chances, and in its place it offers urgency. Not the frantic kind, but the holy kind. The kind that wakes you up at the center of your life and says, this is it, this breath, this moment, this one precious, unrepeatable day. So here we are in a world that hides from death, in bodies that will one day return to the earth, carrying hearts that ache for meaning. And maybe that's the paradox we were meant to live inside, to know that everything ends, and to love it anyway, to wake up each day not in fear of death, but in awe of life, to know that every hello carries the shadow of a goodbye, and to let that make you softer, not harder, more present, not more guarded. You don't need to obsess over death to learn from it. You just need to stop pretending it isn't there. Let it walk beside you. Let it remind you, gently, patiently, that time is not something you own, but something you spend, and you get to choose how. Choose to feel deeply. Choose to love fully, even when it hurts. Choose to slow down, to notice, to be here, even when your mind tells you to rush past. There is nothing more rebellious in this distracted world than choosing to be fully alive, not half awake, not numbed out, but honest, feeling, awake. And when the end comes, as it will, as it must, may it not find you sleeping. May it find you grateful. May it find you brave. May it find you already in conversation with it, as an old companion you've learned not to fear, but to walk with, because the one truth we all deny is also the one that can bring us back to life. And maybe that's the whole point, not to escape death, but to let it teach us how to finally live.